Hello and welcome to another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews, and yet another edition of Rifle and Pistol Pairings. I think this is part 15, and in this episode we're going to talk about the Sears Model 54 Lever Action 3030 and the Smith and Wesson Model 15. And I call this pairing the Midwestern Sherriffs Deputy. This is something that I could picture maybe in the 1970s or 80s, a sheriff out in the Midwest somewhere carrying this Sears Model 54 or a Winchester Model 94 in their cruiser in the back window or in the trunk, and having a Smith and Wesson Model 15 on their hip. Now, the reason I picked the Model 15 for this pairing, this actually was a police trade-in, so I believe this was a Mass State Trooper Model 15 38 Special. So it has a nice place in my heart. I really like police trade-in guns. And this one has just the right amount of wear on the back strap. It was carried a lot previously, and it did have just a standard K-frame grip on it when I bought it. But now it's sporting an Altamont rosewood grip, and I really like the way it looks. Now, the Sears Model 54 was actually nothing more than a kind of cheapened Winchester Model 94 lever action rifle. So this was actually made by Winchester. The bluing on this receiver is not quite as good as a Winchester model. The foregrip on it is not quite as good as a Winchester model, and the clamp that goes on the front of the foregrip is not quite as good either. So the wood on this gun is a little bit rattly, but as far as the heart and the function of this gun, it's nothing more than a Winchester Model 94 lever action 3030. So I have a couple of videos taking this thing out to the range and shooting it, and I think I also had a video about why did I want this gun on the Model 54. Again, my other hobby is collecting and restoring and using vintage Sears garden tractors, and I really like the rich history of the Sears brand store. Now, they've been closed for a couple of years. I think they still have mail order online or an online store. But realistically, I mean, in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s, Sears was like the quintessential leader in just about everything you could possibly want. I mean, you could buy a house from Sears, you could buy farm implements, you could buy garden tractors, you could buy guns, you could buy just about everything from Sears. So I really like the rich history behind this, and I actually remember as a kid Christmas shopping in the Sears catalog. I would basically take that 500 or 600 page book and write out a mile-long list and give it to my parents every year for Christmas. And if I was lucky, I'd get a couple of things off of that list. So I like the rich history behind the Sears model name, and I do have another Sears 22 rifle, but I like the way this is. And when I was looking at a lever gun in 3030, the Sears was a lot cheaper than a Winchester Model 94 or a Marlin. So that's why I ended up buying this gun. Now, when it comes down to the Smith & Wesson Model 15, again, I mentioned that this was actually a police trade-in. It was a state trooper's handgun that was carried for years. That's why it has holster wear on the back strap. And the action on this gun is in very good shape. I think it was carried a lot, but it was not shot a lot because it has a very tight action, and it just looks and feels great in the hand. So again, this is the Midwestern Sheriff kind of pairing. I just like thinking about, some guy out in the Midwest carrying these two guns side by side. Maybe he even had like a 18-inch barrel shotgun in his cruiser as well. So he had, a close range pistol. He had a mid-range shotgun for dispatching larger animals, and then he had a longer range gun that, could reach out to 100, 150 yards without much trouble. Now, the sights on the Sears are nothing to write home about. It has your standard V-notch rear leaf sight with a ladder elevator in it, and I have shot this out to about 100 yards. I'm not very accurate with it. 30-30, it's not a super stout round, but it does give you a bit of a punch with that steel butt plate. And the front sight on this, not exactly sure what you call it. It's kind of a ramp with a half barley corn or something on it, but they're ample enough for what this gun is. And at 50 yards, 60 yards, I'm pretty accurate with it. Out to 100, I start to get a little bit fuzzy, but I mean, I could probably still hold a 7-inch group at 100 yards, which pretty awful, but I don't want to put a scope on that 30-30. I want to keep it just the way it is. Again, this is the Midwestern Sheriff or Sheriff's Deputy pairing. Kind of just a whimsical thought to put these two guns together, but realistically, kind of in the same era. The Model 54 was made around 1964. The Model 15 I have is much newer than that. I think it's from the mid-70s, but I could see somebody in the 1970s carrying these two guns together. So once again, thank you for joining me on another wacky episode of Cranky Gun Reviews, where I just sit around and talk about stuff that has nothing to do with anything other than it's rattling around in my head, and I want to talk about it. So have a great day. God bless America. Support your 2A rights. Get out there and shoot. And you remember, if someone asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, remind them that freedom is the greater good.